Kenai. Eric and I have made a special trip up to Anchorage today, and we're super excited to be sitting in the home of Mr. Ken Miller.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So Eric and I actually saw Ken originally speak at KPC at an event that he did there, and we were both really moved by his story. And like literally the next day, we were like, "Dude, we got to talk to this guy." So yeah, how's it going today, Ken?
Oh, it's going wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. So we'll just have you kind of introduce yourself.
Well, my name is Ken Miller, and I am a business owner. I own a business up in Anchorage, Alaska. I'm a consultant for nonprofits, predominantly in the area of fund development and board development for nonprofits in the state of Alaska, and I also do some things nationally in that area.
Nice. So what kind of got you into fundraising?
I sort of fell into it, working for a company called Beans Cafe. Then I was approached by a large foundation in the state of Alaska to possibly go out on my own as a consultant. And I took them up on it, and I've been doing that coming up on 7 years.
Nice. Super cool. So you're from Alaska, right?
Well, yeah, I moved up here when I was 12 years old from New York.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 57 presently, and I moved up here in 1975. And I left for quite a few years, mainly due to my addiction and alcoholism. And then I came back approximately 11 years ago to marry my high school sweetheart.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's cool.
So you grew up in New York?
Well, you
New
could
York
say that.
area? Okay.
Yeah. My early childhood was spent in New York. As we talk a little bit about my childhood, I was an adopted kid.
Oh, okay.
And I was adopted at age 6. My first 6 years, which were spent in Long Island, predominantly, I was a foster child. And I went through many different foster homes. And then at age 6, I was adopted by my mother and father, who I call my mother and father, Irene and Sam Miller. And at age 12, we moved to Alaska.
Okay. So do you know what brought you guys to Alaska?
Work.
Okay.
And predominantly get away from my father.
Mm-hmm.
Was a large reason. My father was very violent alcoholic.
Okay.
And to escape him, predominantly for me, I was the only child. We moved to Alaska to get as far away as possible from him.
So you and your mom?
Yes, me and my mom, 2 dogs and a cat.
Okay.
Very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So growing up, first of all, as a foster child, I mean, that's hard. As you got older and into Alaska, did you ever have any questions about like for your mom or for your parents, like kind of, because you didn't meet your mom for a long time, right?
Correct.
You're a biological mom.
Correct.
So with your parents and things like that, I feel like a lot of kids that are in this kind of situation kind of have, especially people we've talked to that end up in addiction and in recovery. What are some of the questions did you have questions for like your mom, like regarding your parents when you were young, kind of like what your identity is and like there's ever some questions of like, who am I?
Yes. Yeah, I had quite a few of those. As a foster child, I was 6 years old when I was adopted, but I knew I was a foster child because I had been to all these different foster homes. And the only thing I wanted was someone to call mother. I wasn't concerned about father. At that age, it's all about mother and having someone to call a mother and to have that nurture and love from a woman as a mother. I did not have that. I wanted that. I knew I was missing that. And until I found my mother, my biological mother, that hole was never filled. But the mother who adopted me, her name was Irene Miller, was an incredible human being and a beautiful person in all facets of her walk in life. And I'm just honored and glad that I had an opportunity to spend time with her. Unfortunately, as my story will entail, I hurt her quite a bit emotionally. There's things that I did that caused her a lot of pain, and not that I have regret on that. I very much accepted where I am, but when she passed, our relationship was beautiful. It was beautiful.
So when you moved up to Alaska, if you can remember, what were kind of your thoughts there? Like, was it hard? Was it fun? What were kind of your...
I moved here in September of 1975, and first of all, I was tremendously relieved that I was away from my father.
Mm-hmm.
My father was very violent,
Mm-hmm.
and the violence was always perpetrated upon me.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Never did anything to my mother until later on when he shot her. That's another story. So I moved up in 1975. I was going to Central Junior High in Anchorage, Alaska, living on 1535 K Street. September of 75. The economy was superheated due to the pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
But I do remember that there was an officer who had been shot, Officer John, I think it's John Flora, Anchorage PD, who was shot. And we had come from New York where there was a lot of violence directed at police. And I was just so surprised. I thought we got away from that because New York was really in bad shape back in the 70s. New York City was. And so we came up, but I was just so, it was like, I tell people, other than some periods of my sobriety, that was the happiest probably 4 months of my life.
Yeah, just getting up and just you and your mom. And
just me and my mom, 2 dogs, and 1 cat.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
So Aaron and I took a history class at the college, and it was really cool. A history of Alaska, to be specific, and that was really cool to learn so much about Alaska. And now we were joking today, and we're like, hey, Walter J. Hickel Parkway, and because we learned he's a politician, and so now it's like all these names and things like mean something in the Anchorage area. So when you moved up, do you know? In 77, was the pipeline in at that point, or was it being fought over?
In 75.
Oh, sorry.
September of 1975, it was being built.
It was being built.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it was really towards the beginning of it being built. It was built throughout the rest of the 70s. I think it might have opened 79-ish,
Mm-hmm.
1980. So it was the economy, like I said, was overheated. What that means is there wasn't enough housing.
Mm-hmm.
And when there's a great demand for small supply, prices go up.
Right.
Things get very expensive. So it was very expensive from especially where we were coming from. But again, we were poor at that time, so my mother's income could catch up.
Mm-hmm.
But we were so happy.
Mm-hmm.
We were so happy. At least I was so. Well, we were so happy.
Right. Yeah, it was one of the things that in that history class that I really didn't know before, but came to know was that the pipeline was such a contentious deal between the state and the feds for so long. And so now it's like hearing about those things, I'm like, man, okay, so there was a lot going on at that time.
A lot going
politically,
on.
yeah.
It's
Economically.
fun. It's a fun time.
Yeah.
It was a great time for Alaska in a lot of ways. We're like a young state,
Mm-hmm.
and almost you could say it was like our teenage years.
Yeah.
So we were founded in '59,
Right.
so we were 18 years old. In a lot of ways, I believe we acted like we were 18, or the state did. And then what happens is money changes people.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is that when you have access to a great amount of wealth, decisions need to be made many times for long term, and decisions many times are made for short term because there's a pent up demand for goods and services that weren't there. So anyway, that's what Anchorage was smaller, obviously. It was dirtier. It was more dangerous. People think it's more dangerous now. It wasn't. Per capita, it was much more dangerous.
Sure.
4th Avenue was terrible back in those days.
Okay.
And it was definitely rougher,
Mm-hmm.
especially Anchorage. Anchorage is growing up and now it's this cosmopolitan city, but it was pretty tough. But we did have Nordstroms.
Yeah, right.
It just opened.
Yeah. Aaron and I just went to the mall today, and I said, "Man, Nordstrom's shut down." Yeah. So okay, I think so. You get to Alaska, and then tell us about there.
So I get to Alaska. I go to Central. In 8th grade. My first half of my 8th grade year, I was at Central. Then we moved to the Diamond area. I went to Mears for half a year, and then we moved over to Chester Valley on the west side, not west side, on the east side by Muldoon. And I went to Bartlett for the next 4 years. Graduated from Bartlett High School. While I was in Bartlett, I did well academically, and I was accepted to Dartmouth College. I went Ivy League.
Wow.
Dartmouth College.
And that was, I mean, was that like, whoa, I'm going to Dartmouth? Or
No.
were you just kind of,
No, it was
I'm
hard.
pretty smart. Like,
Yeah.
I do well in school. I'm going to go to Dartmouth.
Yeah, I applied to Dartmouth, Harvard, Oberlin, got accepted to all of them. Decided to go to Dartmouth for a few different
And that's
reasons.
in Hanover, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Hanover, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Had never been there, didn't know anything about it, never saw prep in my life,
Right.
and went off to Dartmouth in the fall of 1980. At that time, to go to the alcohol and the drugs, in the mid-70s, late 70s, weed was very prevalent in Anchorage, even in the high school level. Because remember back in the 70s, we could smoke cigarettes in the high school. I mean, outside, there was a smoking area, but there was a lot of smokers. So that was allowed, and weed was decriminalized. And a lot of individuals I knew at the high school level smoked weed. So I was exposed to weed and smoked it twice, but didn't really care for it. And I had a half a beer in high school.
Wow.
Because I'm an alcoholic. You know, if I was to start drinking in high school, I would never went to Dartmouth, that's for sure. I would probably went to college because I'm a full-blown alcoholic, which I found out very shortly upon my arrival at Dartmouth.
So that's, what's very plain is your consumption of substances throughout high school is remarkably low. You know, why was that?
A couple reasons. Number one, I was a good kid.
Sure.
I was a good kid.
Yeah.
I was an academic. I was just a nice kid. And then my father came back into my life in 8th grade. After being separated for about 4 or 5 months, my mother allowed him to come back. So he came back, stayed sober for a couple of years. I was always deathly afraid of my father. And so I wasn't going to act out in any way or shape or form with drugs or alcohol as long as my father was in that house. Approximately my senior year in high school, my father started drinking again. My father is an alcoholic, and my father is violent. And so we proceeded to get into disagreements. It's a very nice way of saying he whooped my ass a few times. Police had to be called. And we finally had to, my senior year in high school, we had to hide out.
Really?
Literally hide out.
Wow.
And because it got so bad.
Yeah.
And so we hid out until I could go off to college.
Yeah.
And I didn't speak to my father or see my father for approximately 3 years after that.
Okay.
So you're not using in high school and up until college, and so when you get to college and your use, it sounds like it kind of starts to take off when you get there. Was it just kind of this about now, like you're totally out on your own, you have no reason not to, and you just kind of dabbling, or like how does that kind of
So this is how this starts.
lead over?
And I hope individuals that are listening will understand this. I am an alcoholic because I have a physiological reaction to alcohol that I'm incapable of stopping once I start. That's what makes me an alcoholic. It's not my past. It's not the conditions. It's not my environment. That's my opinion and that's my belief. When I went to college, the reason I started drinking in college is because that's what college kids do. We drink. That's what we do on the weekends. That's what we do on the weekdays. That's what we have fraternities for. It's to drink. And so I imbibed. The last thing I wanted to do was be an alcoholic. I had an example of my father. Why would I want to be like my father?
Sure.
My mom drank zero.
Yeah.
But I'm a college kid. I want to relate. I want to hang out. So I drank. The first day I went to Dartmouth, I came in the evening like a lost fish. And I remember walking down the hall and they were smoking weed and in the dorm room. And I'm like, isn't that illegal? You know, I was so naive. And where did you come from? And so I smoked some weed and because that's what we did. So I started drinking approximately October of my freshman year, and by December of my freshman year, I was a full-blown alcoholic. And all that means is that I have the inability to control the amount that I drink once I start. And I have a tendency to drink to excess, and I make really bad decisions under the influence of alcohol. That's simple.
It's pretty dang clear. So you said you graduated from Dartmouth,
Barely.
but you did.
Yeah, we could say that.
So somehow you functioned enough. Maybe you can. I wonder about. I just as a
I barely functioned,
Okay.
especially towards the end. I had a diary at one point, and I remember I wrote in the diary, it was 31 days that year, and 31 of them I was drunk when I was writing in that journal. And one day I didn't write. So I was drunk every single day. And when I mean drunk, I drank to excess. And I'm not even say I was good at it. I had the ability to drink a lot. I've drank 30 beers in an hour and 10 minutes. You know, I've chugged 14 ounces of whiskey in one chug, which I'm not gonna say almost killed me, but shut down my throat. I'll never forget that. And literally 3 minutes later, from dead sober, I was dead drunk. He had to carry me back up to my dorm room, not dorm room, my fraternity room. I've had violence under the influence of alcohol. I've been hurt bad under the influence of alcohol. Engaged in behavior, theft, and other sundry items. I've had attempted sexual assault under the influence of alcohol while drunk in college. So I can go on. There's a litany of stories and things that I did. And this is early. We're talking about this is the first 2 to 3 years of my drinking that I did these things. And yeah, I barely, because my big thing was it was difficult for me to go to class because I'd be hungover. Well, I just didn't want to go.
Right.
And I can say I'm fortunate in the areas that I am intelligent. I'm very intelligent in the areas that I'm intelligent, which are English and history. But math and science, I had to get a tutor and do a few other things just to make it through Dartmouth. Dartmouth is not easy. It's an Ivy League school.
Yeah.
And but I did, and I'm here today, and I do have my diplomas upstairs, and I have graduated. So I got out of college and survived college. And my graduation present, literally for college, was my first treatment center. And people who know my story, I've ended up doing 14 inpatient treatment centers over the years.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But my first one was a place called North Point Treatment Center. It was on Fireweed in Anchorage, Alaska. That was my graduation present. I didn't know that. I thought I was going to get a car. Instead, I got treatment. And I went into treatment and stopped drinking.
What was your attitude at that point? Were you like, yeah, I'm an alcoholic. I don't drink like other people. I need to go to treatment. I mean, what was it? Your
I was
attitude towards
incredibly.
treatment?
It's not even an attitude toward
Sure.
treatment. It was an attitude towards life.
Sure.
I was tremendously depressed.
Okay.
Because I was removed from the alcohol and the drugs. And I'm back home, and I remember I pretty much laid on a couch for like 2 to 3 weeks. You know, it might have been in some ways withdrawal. Because at that time my drugs of choice were weed and powder cocaine. This is 1984. There was no crack. There was no freebase. There was no methamphetamine. There was no heroin. All the things I ended up doing later on, those did not exist. And the Willie said Dartmouth they didn't exist.
Right.
I never saw. So, but you still go through withdrawals. And also I missed the party.
Yeah.
I was a partier. So I had a world created around my drinking and drugging that I had many other individuals that were willing to join in with me. And then when you remove that environment, it makes it real difficult to continue that behavior. Plus, I'm at home, and my mom was going to put up with it.
Mm-hmm. So what's that car ride like when your mom's driving? Like because it was a surprise, right? Like you thought you were going to the car dealership and you end up going to North Points. Like, is it?
Yeah, very surprised because I was very happy. I was going to get my car. I'm like, what? I had no money, but I'm thinking, Corvette, maybe a Beamer. Back in those days, Saabs were cool, and but that just shows you really the insanity of because I didn't even deserve, a graduation present for many reasons. My grades weren't that great, and what it did, it precluded. Because my goal was to be either a politician, but definitely be a lawyer. I never had an opportunity to be a lawyer because the years that I could have went to grad school, or at least I could have chosen to go to grad school, I was in my active addiction and alcoholism. So we returned. I go to the treatment, but once I went in, I was like, this is cool, and but it was tough because my ego was so strong at that point. Because I'm 21 years old, and people who know me in the city, I'm African American, I'm 6'2", I weigh, 190, I'm a good looking guy, modeling later on, doing things in that area. And I got an Ivy League degree, and I go and I get a job in the white collar world, in corporate sales. I'm making $50,000 a year, which is a lot of money in 84, 85. And I didn't think I had to do the program as it was outlined in the anonymous program.
Yeah, there was a program for those guys, and there was a program for guys like you.
Right.
Oh,
and I'm too smart for that.
Yeah, totally.
I'm a National Merit Scholar in intellectual. So, and what it predominantly means is I did not have to engage in the spiritual aspects of the program. And then the other one, which is the one that probably came back to haunt me, is I thought my problem was with alcohol. Therefore, I could engage with other drugs, knowing that my problem was alcohol. I didn't have a problem with weed.
Right.
I really didn't have a problem with powder cocaine early on. And so I got 2 years sobriety, but I was still doing weed. And I was doing powder cocaine. But I wasn't drinking.
Yeah.
I wasn't drinking.
Sober.
I'm sober. Not clean, but I'm sober.
Yeah.
Were you, and I get this is a funky term to use in this case, but were you at that point managing things? Were you
awesome?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
because that's what it sounded like.
Right. I was doing awesome except for when the cocaine started to turn on me.
Okay.
The weed, to this day, I have friends who do weed and have a fantastic life. Okay. There's also friends I have who do alcohol and have a fantastic life.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I know very few people that do crack that have a fantastic life, or do methamphetamine that have a fantastic life. I even know people who do heroin who are nurses.
Yeah.
As long as they get their wake up, okay, the early morning one, and they do a shot at night, they function. I don't know how long. These are anomalies. Please, I do not recommend being a functioning heroin addict any way, shape, or form. Having said that, that is them. That's not me. I cannot take any mind-altering chemical volitionally on purpose and keep my sobriety or keep my sanity or be an upstanding member of this community or society, period. That's for me.
Right.
It's my story. And so the cocaine, I was functioning. I wasn't doing too bad there. I probably was still had my cocaine powder. But once I got introduced to freebase, then we had a problem. And so I did freebase a couple times, and it really, really threw me for a loop. And I stopped doing freebase. And finally, in 1986, after being sober for 2 years. I flew to Hawaii, and a gentleman offered me a blue Hawaiian, and I pretty much made a decision. Maybe I'm not an alcoholic. Maybe I'm not.
Yeah.
You know, I'm 23. I got this awesome life.
Yeah.
You know,
You can manage it now.
yeah, and
Old Ken couldn't, new Ken.
right.
He's got it.
Because remember, many times this is a difficulty that people have in recovery. They believe that their addiction or alcoholism is based on external factors. So if I change the external factors, if I change the environment, therefore I can drink / use without pain on the back end. That's what it all comes down to. In the end, it comes down to pain on the back end. How can I take my drug of choice, because there's things that are positive, to me at least, or I'm just addicted, and not have pain on the back end? I know for a 100% fact I cannot, for any length of time, take my drug of choice or any drug and not have pain on the back end.
Yeah.
So I go to Hawaii. I'm thinking maybe I can handle this now. I can do this and literally within 2 days. Because I can't stop. Like I don't, my shutoff valve doesn't work. You know, for many alcoholics, we're just saying, my shutoff valve doesn't work. And what I mean by that, I can imbibe and will continue to imbibe until either I pass out or I get arrested or something else happens that stops. Usually I fall asleep. So, and then again, once you get enough beers in me, things that for rational reasons are not alternative for me to engage in become very doable. Very doable.
Yeah. All inhibitions off.
Oh yeah, inhibitions are off, and there's a part that says for a rational person that for long term we will not engage in specific behavior, because long term is bad for us. The long term is going to put you in prison for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. The long term is you're going to lose the wife or the girlfriend. The long term is you're going to break a relationship with people that love you and you love. That's the long term. But short term, the viable thing is to go rob this gas station.
Right.
Which I did.
Right.
I mean, that's another story there on down the road. So I made that decision and got back on that horse. And I had to ride that for a long time. That was 1986. And I really didn't come back up for air until 91. So we had 5 years. Yeah, 5 years. And it was a tough 5 years.
From Hawaii, did you come back up here and
yeah, I came back home.
And things kind of fell apart, employment-wise, housing-wise.
Quickly.
A month or
yeah,
two.
it took a little longer. It took about 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Because I built up again this incredible life.
Yeah.
But it took about 2 years, and I lost pretty much everything. Then I got an offer to move to the lower 48 because they didn't know. All they saw was what was on paper. But I brought my addiction with me. Again, let's change the environment. I can do it differently. And within literally a month, I crashed a company car, lost my job, and I was suicidal. I was going to jump off the Spokane Falls Bridge. Never forget that. And that's when I went into my first inpatient treatment center in 1988. I was going to say Cedar Point, but Sundown Inn Ranch.
So how has your mindset changed from going with your mom the first time to walking on the second time?
The second time I was so desperate. That was me. I called my mom up. I was getting ready to jump off the bridge. I probably would have done it. I tried to kill myself. That's later on. But anyway, I was on the bridge, despondent. And I called my mom. I said, my mother did not accept my phone call. It was a collect call. Back in the day, no cell phones. And she said, Kenneth, she was calling me Kenneth, I know you haven't been doing well, and I have a treatment center for you. And I was like, how do you know this?
Right.
And so I went to Sundown Inn, inpatient, and I had 21 or 28 days, did it. And it was so funny because I came out, I'm like, I got this. I got this. And I went to Seattle, and stayed, let's say, sober for another month or two. Then I started drinking. I was working in Nordstrom's in Seattle, and I got introduced to crack cocaine. This is in late '88, and within 2 or 3 months of being introduced to crack cocaine, I began my journey of being homeless, and straight homeless. Those are the missions.
How long did it? So it's when you move to Seattle, you have a job,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm assuming you have a place to live.
Mm-hmm.
So how long after you're introduced to crack cocaine does it take for all of that to just
2
kind
months.
of 2 months?
2
Yeah,
months.
just gone.
Probably 2 months. Because with crack, you spend every cent. Alcohol, you can, it's not as expensive, number
Mhm.
one. And number two is it's definitely slower. I used to sometimes say, I'm so glad I got introduced to to crack cocaine, because it took me down so fast, so many times, that I either had to get help or go to prison or try to end it,
Mhm.
because it would take me down so fast.
Yeah, I'm not making light of crack, but somebody told, so the sentiment isn't to do that, but somebody told me, they said I knew this person, and they told me crack tastes like more. Like you just want more. Like, I mean, that's the best way to define like the ultimate like taste of crack, is that like more. Like, we want more.
I don't remember. I'm just talking about even this physical taste of crack. Crack tastes differently, but there's a smell to crack. And every once in a while I'll smell it. And it's not crack, but it's
Right.
something that smells like crack. And as soon as I hear it, it just fires off the synapses in my brain. It doesn't make me want to. I was like, oh, it's crack. That's what crack smells like.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because it just paints a picture as soon as I smell it.
Right.
And again, it's so much, everything that we do in recovery or even in our addiction has to really do with our senses and our perceptions. And our perceptions can lead us into good or bad. Okay, because again, that's the gift from God, is that we can perceive things, and it's how do we interpret. And I always talk about how do we interpret time. And one of the things that drug addiction does too, it changes time. It changes how we look at time. And one of the things about being restoration of sanity is to get back to a point where you can look at time differently. How you look at the past, how you look at the present, how you look at the future. An addict doesn't have a sense of future.
Mhm.
It's gone. Everything's in the present. I don't think about what type of lick I'm going to do a month from now.
Mhm.
I don't think about
Right.
what kind of robbery I'm going to do 6 months from now.
Mhm.
I'm thinking about literally the next hour.
Right.
Or at the most, I'm thinking about when I become conscious in the morning or come to, what am I going to do today
Mhm.
to feed my addiction?
Right.
Okay? And then the past we use differently and perceive differently as an addict or as someone. And that's one of the things that in recovery we have to learn how to change our perception of the past.
Mhm.
And so as an addict, the past is used mainly, from what I've seen, as an excuse.
Mhm.
It's the rationalization for being the addict or alcoholic. Because I was beat, because I was sexually abused, because I didn't have a mom, because. We'll use the past. We say, well, because of this past, because I need to rationalize something that I know is not good for me. Deep down inside, I know it's not good for me. I knew that as a crackhead. I knew that as an alcoholic. But if you had the life I grew up with, you'd be one too.
Right.
And you have to take away and change those perceptions of the past and change the emotion connected with past memories. I've done that recovery tremendously.
Right.
So we're up to 88, 89. I've now become homeless. And that means I'm living in Seattle in the mission.
Mhm.
There's 5 missions: Peniel Mission, Bread of Life Mission, Downtown Emergency Shelter, Seattle Gospel Mission, and the Salvation Ark Program, Adult Rehabilitation Center Program. Those are the 5.
Mhm.
And I would just rotate between those. I didn't know the streets that well, so I didn't hustle as much as I ended up doing later on. but I didn't function very well at all, and so I kept going in and out of different drug treatment programs. The state of Washington has some good ones, and finally, in 1991, I had begun pimping teenage girls. And Aurora Boulevard, South Tacoma, downtown Seattle, we call them SeaTac area, where the SeaTac killer got all these girls. Those were my areas that I would work with the young ladies. And it's sad because many of them didn't have an addiction problems when I was too young, but they definitely had problems with self-esteem. Every single one of them had a sexual assault when they were younger. I mean, I've talked to probably 100, 200 working girls in my life, and every one of them, there's some type of sexual assault. At least everyone I've spoken to. Because I would speak with them, I've talked to them. And anyway, so I was doing that, and so a situation happened that I had lost contact with my main young lady that I was working with. And no, I wasn't working with. I was taking advantage of to feed my addictions. And I ended up doing a burglary. And I did the burglary, and I was caught. Well, they knew I did it. I burglarized the next door neighbor's house to where we were fixing a house on some day labor. And everybody watched me do it who was working there. And so I went to get sentenced for a Class A felony, state of Washington, 5-year minimum, which is a home burglary. And I was given an extraordinary sentence of what they call intensive probation, which is hardly ever given in a Class A. But they did it because of my Ivy League background.
Right.
And I didn't really have a criminal background. I had a couple crimes before that, 2 DUIs, and I had a theft charge.
It kind of paints a picture that like you're not necessarily a criminal first and an addict second. You're more of an addict first. That's like a symptom of your criminal behavior is a symptom of your addictive tendencies versus a repeating criminal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Good way of putting it. And but it's funny. Talk about it. Because a lot of times you talk to addicts, many addicts don't want to identify as being alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic first, before I became a drug addict. And I got a DUI in 1991. And I went to jail in the state of Washington, go to jail for 3 days, automatic, 72 hours. I got out, let's say 4 o'clock. I was back in jail for another DUI within 3 hours.
Jeez.
I went straight. I went home. Cab driver took me home. I got in my car, drove to the bar. There's an off-duty cop in uniform working the door, moonlighting, working the door. And I went in there, got drunk, walked out, past the cop in uniform, and put my key in the ignition. He'd stand right in front of the car and turn it off. As soon as you do that, wow. So I go back into jail. I was supposed to do a month. On your second offense, you do 30 days, automatic. It hadn't gone through the system. So all they gave me was another 3 days. Yeah. And it was funny because the jailer came on the next shift, and he's like, I thought you were getting out. Like, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And so I did another 3 days, got out, same cab driver picked me up, and he's like, you again? Like, yeah, I'm not going to drive this time. When I get home. So I picked up 2 DUIs in 4 days. And I got out, went to Alaska, worked on a fishing and crab boat, picked up a charge while I was gone, called my mom, and she said, you need to come home because it's a theft charge that you have, which was crazy. And came back, and it was just a misdemeanor, dealt with that, and then continued to go downhill, started the pimping, and then I picked up the burglary. So I did 2 years, stayed sober and clean for 2 years. And during that time, I thought I was I still didn't want to do the spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
But I worked a pretty good program. Pretty good. I had a good life. I had a really good life. But, and I talk about this all the time, emotional trigger events. When you are clean or sober, you have to be always on the lookout for emotional trigger events. You can't, let's say an emotion is on a scale of 1 to 10, good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
As an addict or alcoholic, especially in early recovery, you can't afford any 7, 8s, or 9s. You can't afford them because they put you in too much emotional pain.
Right.
And drugs work.
Mm-hmm.
People hear all the time, drugs don't work. No, drugs always work. The only thing a drug does is change your perception of reality. You take aspirin because your perception of reality is that you're in pain. And the drug masks that pain. It works.
Yeah.
Okay? People always say, oh, drugs stop working for me. I said, well, take 4 hits of acid and tell me that didn't work. Okay? Just my experience, I've taken 4 hits of acid.
Mm-hmm.
It works.
Right.
Okay? Whether you want to be or don't want it to work.
You want it to work or not, it's going to happen.
So I got to a position where I had some emotional pain, a tremendous amount of emotional pain, because I wasn't being true to myself in a relationship that I was in. I was using a woman, and I ended up doing this for many, many years, using women. And anyway, I was using this woman for a place to live, and she took care of me.
Before you have a question, what is it, I guess, in maybe an example, or could you expound on what you mean by not being true to yourself? Because I hear that, but sometimes I don't know what that means.
So fundamentally, you understand what your truth is.
Okay.
And this is an issue of self-esteem.
Okay.
And what it comes down to is that you know what will make you feel comfortable or is the thing that is your core fundamental beliefs.
Your values.
Okay, values, beliefs, integrity. And you'll see this a lot. And the one I'm going to use the example, because that was the truth, was in a relationship. I was in a relationship with a woman I did not love. I was in a relationship with a woman I never loved. Mm-hmm. But she provided this.
Right.
And I knew that. And so when I realized that after a couple of years, but I'm like sort of stuck in this relationship, and I didn't like it. And so it started building up. And this ended up happening again when I relapsed this another time. Same thing. What happened was she went on a trip, and I decided to drink, and within literally 48 hours, I had destroyed a life. Destroyed when I'm talking about destroyed a life, I'm talking about destroyed a world. Okay, her world, my world, and her sister's world, because I had keys to her sister's apartment. So I destroyed the world. Destroyed 3 worlds in 48 hours. Yeah. And that was the beginning. That was 1994. It was like June of 94. And really for the next 10 years, it was really ugly.
Just got back, just right back to it, huh?
Yeah, went back, and I go up and down, because now in a few years, we'll start going to jail and prison.
Right.
And that would be breaks for me. And I would go right back into it. In the meantime, I got married, beautiful wife, and again, I had an emotional trigger event. And with that, and what the emotional trigger event for me, it says that I'm my own worst enemy. I don't like me. This is sober. I don't like me because I'm not being true to me.
Right.
Me wants or needs or desires certain things that are not being met. And because of that, I'm weak, I'm less than, and therefore I have a lot of self-hatred. And so we have a term that we use in the program, a term I use, and it's called ethics. And we don't want to get to the ethics. Because
Right.
once I get to the ethics, then I'm in a position where all I
I
say.
didn't know what you were saying.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, all right, I know those.
Right, I don't know where we are with
yeah.
profanity.
Oh,
so-
no, yeah.
Yeah.
F it.
F it.
Ethic.
No,
Yeah,
okay.
what was ethic?
Yeah,
No,
fine.
totally.
So once you get to that, what you're saying is, I know this probably not going to be good for me. I know that, but F it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in enough pain. I
Right.
don't care. Just that sense, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I say we changed the sense of long term.
Right.
So we end up doing things, the longer version of it is we do things that are inimical to our long term well being.
Mm-hmm.
Inimical means bad
Mm-hmm.
for us long term. And we make decisions based on that. Because it's all, in the end, it's always about decisions.
Right.
Not so much choices. I have the same choice. I have a choice today, drink or drug if I so choose.
Mm-hmm.
But my decision is to not drink or drug.
Right.
So I got to that point where I relapsed and went up and down, got married, stayed sober for a little while. Then again, I had some self-doubt and I had a sense of less than. Tremendous. I remember talking to a friend of mine in sobriety, good friend of mine named Marvin, and I'm talking to him and he said, Ken, if you don't do something about this, you will relapse. And literally, probably a week later, I relapsed on crack cocaine. And that was the beginning of the end. That was 96.
Mm-hmm.
And until 2004, other than respites based on jail and prison, it was all bad.
Mm-hmm.
It was all bad.
Right.
Did you stay here? I mean, it was
No,
all
no.
bad here.
No.
You went.
No, at that time I was in Seattle,
Okay.
and I went from Seattle to get married in California. I was in Yuba City area and Marysville, and I was married to a lovely lady, and I was a father. I was a stepfather, and assumed the role. I was a breadwinner. She didn't work. She was a stay-at-home mother. And I chose because I did not have the maturity to deal with certain situations in my life, in my relationship with her, that I chose to go out there. But I had been lying. Anyway, I didn't have as much clean time as she thought. And so I relapsed and went down pretty quickly, and I moved back to Reno. I moved to Reno, Nevada, and that's where I did all my prison time.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of my real street life
Right.
is, as you heard some of my story, I was street.
Mm-hmm.
And I was all about the hustle.
What did that look like?
What did it entail?
Yeah.
So the hustle, very simply, so it's funny because I watch a lot of TV, not a lot of TV, I see TV and unless you're watching something a little bit with cops. But every time in cops, everybody gets arrested, they have no shirts on. That's not, I always had my shirt on. Okay? Yeah, I mean, I got no shirt. Yeah. So I had my shirt on. But other than that, it was very simple. I was very close to that.
Sure.
But on the streets, there's different levels of active addiction. There's different levels of alcoholism. First of all, you have groups of people that are alcoholics that are, what you were saying, are sustaining alcoholics. So many of them have a check that comes in monthly, so they pay their motel room. So everything, at least in Reno, is all about motels.
Mm-hmm.
We lived in and out of motels. Okay? Sometimes abandoned cars, abandoned homes, but almost everything was motels. My great goal on the street was to get a room for a week. That was like my biggest thing I could think of. Okay, it was a weekly. But usually it was a daily and maybe a couple, 2-3 people, or you'd go to somebody else who had a room, hang out with them and go do your thing. And if you had a room, you'd invite people, they could stay with you. So anyway, first of all, you take care of your housing and there's individuals that can function in there. Then you have individuals who are those who are on the supply side. Those are your drug dealers, most drug dealers, well, almost all drug dealers don't have, if they're not alcoholics, rarely will that happen. And very rarely are they drug addicts. Now, they all do drugs in that they smoke weed or what we call brimmies, crack cocaine sprinkled on weed, but they're not addicts because it's very difficult to function when your product is something that you use.
Right.
Because I tried to deal on many occasions, and I couldn't because I would smoke up all my dope.
Right.
And then you have individuals that are on the margins, and those individuals are the ones that are, quote unquote, your street people. Mm-hmm. And those are your hustlers. So, as a female hustler, always your number one hustle is going to be prostitution. So sometimes you could be a booster. You could supply your addiction through boosting. But it was all different aspects of prostitution. Mm-hmm. Whether it's prostitution where you live with a drug dealer, there's prostitution where you have a sugar daddy, there's prostitution where you walk the streets, there's prostitution where you have alcohol services. But they're all prostitution. Mm-hmm. You're selling a commodity to supply your drugs. For men, we have a few more. We can engage in robbery, which I did. You can engage in, the main one I did was I was the in-between. That's the best way. There's a better word for it, but that's what I did. All I did is I went up and down the street and I would look at people and say, "You looking? You looking? You all right? You all right? You looking?" And all I needed is for them to acknowledge they were looking for something. Mm-hmm. And it was my job to find them whatever they were looking for. Mm-hmm. And predominantly they're looking for either drugs or sex. Right. Okay? And then the sex could be male or female. And if they're looking for a female, I knew all the girls, and I would get what's called broken offer. I'd get a split of that. Mm-hmm. If they're looking for a male, I would offer myself, or I would offer myself. You know, yeah. Well, I'm gonna bring a million other dudes. No, yeah. No. And so I got involved with that, and that's a hustle. That's the hustle. Right. A hustle is just any type of thing that you can do to make money or drugs. Mm-hmm. And so you have different hustles, and then those things we would do in the casinos, because there's casinos. You go into hopper diving, and looking for change that's left in the hoppers. There's a couple of, I never was really good with that. I was never good at shoplifting. Right. I just didn't feel comfortable doing that. There's things you can do with checks. I mean, this is different. There's crime, and and of course, we, like I said, deal with drugs, but small level. Yeah. I had an extra rock and I tried to flip it. But my main thing was being an in-between and selling myself. Those are my two main things that I did personally. And it was, would you say it was tough? I didn't care. I was very present. There was one time a guy came to the room and he said, "You down?" And there was another person from the streets. And I'm like, "Cool, let's do it." I didn't know what it was. It could have been a murder. I didn't murder someone. If I thought I could have got away with it. Right. Yeah, no, easily, unfortunately. I went to, unfortunately, tried to kill people on 3 occasions that I can remember. And I know twice with a gun, and one I tried to throw the guy off the balcony, 3rd floor balcony at a motel. All drug related, almost all of them about disrespect and money. One was over $100, one was over 6 rocks of crack cocaine, and one was just because of the way he was talking to me in front of people I knew. And in return, people have tried to hurt me bad, and people have hurt me. They've broken my jaw twice, eye over the nose broken. That's the streets. And then the other thing I did, I didn't even talk about, the other one. I panhandled. I was a great panhandler. Right. Because all I needed was 93 cents. Because I drank beer. It was 32 ounce natural ice beer, Busch natural ice, 32 ounce, 93 cents. And all I needed to do was come up with 93. So in the beginning of the day, that was predominantly what I would do. "Hey, can I get $1? And I was very frank about it. "Can I get $1 for a beer?" And you ended up knowing who to ask. Right. and I'd ask college age white kids, white men, college age, and that was the best group I found.
Right.
By far. Most women didn't really want to talk to me on the street for good reason.
Mm-hmm.
So you're, so during those years at that point, I mean, ever getting sober, ever building a life that you may have thought about when you're 17, I mean, does that creep up from time to time? Like, are you experiencing shame at that point?
It was shame, of course. Some of the sexual, because it's not like you get to choose who you sleep with,
right?
I believe this is PG rated, so I have to be careful on what I say. But you don't get to choose what acts you engage in. And I've done anything.
Right.
I've done some weird. Because people, so you got to understand how this works. There are those that sell drugs. There are those that commit crimes to get more money for drugs. These are the people I'm dealing with.
Right.
And then there are the individuals that are looking. We call them marks. And the marks are pretty much squares.
Yeah.
But they want drugs or women. Remember, they're in Reno, Nevada. It's this casino. So they're coming from different states, and they're looking for pleasure. And they many times are very square looking.
Yeah.
And then once they get to the motel room and get a little drugs in them, they transform. They transform, and they get stuck many times. And one of our favorite things to do is get them stuck, and then we kidnap them
and get their family to.
Well, they'd have to get Western Union, and they couldn't leave so kidnapping is moving someone under the threat of violence, okay, or impeding their movement under the threat of violence. Yeah, the threat of violence, and we were threatening.
Yeah.
And we were threatening. So I don't forget to edit this now. But anyway, it just when I think about it, so was there shame? Yeah, there was definitely shame on some of the sexual things I did. And a lot of the shame though was just what a waste.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's what I'm thinking.
Ivy educated. I had all from the outside looking in.
You were set.
I was set. Healthy, good looking, tall, dark, handsome, quote unquote.
Right.
I believe it. And here I am out here turning tricks in a car or behind a house, behind a motel, whatever.
Right. Wherever, whenever, however.
Yeah.
Years.
It's not like,
No, this wasn't like a one-time thing.
Yeah.
This started in Seattle in like 90. I'd gotten it. So I told him when I did my speak, I told him about the situation. I got into a situation where I was at a club in Anchorage. Originally started in Anchorage. And I was taken advantage of sexually by another man. And the shame, probably no shame equal that shame.
Right.
Because I was the first one. And then I got into a situation in Seattle where if I did certain things, I would get paid. And I wanted to smoke some more crack.
Right.
I was like, hey, I'll
do anything. Yeah.
I'll do anything. And that started it. And then, like I said, I was attractive. And so more offers came. And then, then you start almost actively soliciting it.
Right. Because it works now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. If you got it, you do whatever is available. And I'm not an armed robber. I've done an armed robbery. I'm not a thug.
Right.
Any way, shape, or form. So you go out there, you do those things, and the shame comes from, again, the waste. And then the shame, a lot of it for me came from the severing of relationships with people that love me. Because there are people that love me. I am a very lovable person, clean and sober. Remember, I was a super innocent kid. I was a really nice kid. And my mom, some of my relatives, my friends, my girlfriend.
So what is your relationship with your mom like this around these times at like 96
because I do what a lot of alcoholics and drug addicts do. I sever the relationship. I'm tired of hurting them.
Right.
So I'm thinking out of sight, out of mind, they won't hurt, but they still hurt.
Yeah.
because they can't find you, they can't communicate with you.
They don't know if you're alive or dead day to day.
I've dealt with that.
Mm-hmm.
People looking for me, calling the hospitals, calling the morgue, calling the police station, because I disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Everything looks good on the outside, and then payday comes.
Right.
And I'm gone.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, back before cell phones, there's no way I'm not calling you.
Right.
In the middle of my addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, there's a tremendous amount of shame. It's, we use the word shame, but, no, just self-hatred.
Right.
So, because I had so much self-hatred, what I would do is I would hurt myself. I would physically hurt myself. Sometimes you hear about this with women a lot. I was a cutter.
Mm-hmm.
So I got all kinds of cut marks, and I had burn marks. And then to show you guys burn marks, where I just burned myself.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was 5 cigarettes on that one. I would jab myself with ice picks. I mean, I would just hurt myself, and then I would do things to myself that were degrading.
Right.
And I mean, I'm not even going into the detail, but they were degrading.
Yeah.
And I'd sometimes think, did I really do that?
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a different version of this story that I will go into. Some more of the degradation. And hopefully it will help some.
Right.
Because we're going to talk about, hopefully we'll get to the recovery part. That's the other side.
Yeah.
So self-hatred, shame, and this lack of self-esteem that manifests itself with a continuum of a spiral. So finally in 2000, I go to treatment number 8 or 9 or whatever. I get out. I go and live with this girl who's who's in recovery too. She relapses, and shortly after I relapse.
Mm-hmm. Kind of together.
Oh, yeah. And then I go and I go to my mom's place. I had the keys at that point. I built a relationship. I had been in treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And I robbed her. I robbed the house. I burglarized her. And I took her sleeping pills. I took her checkbook. And went on and cashed the checks. And I was so devastated that I had done that. I took the pills. Mm-hmm. And they were sleeping pills. And
with no intention of waking up, I'm assuming.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
You understand. The object for me in suicide was not to kill myself. It was to stop the pain.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to stop the pain. I just couldn't think of another way of doing it, stopping the pain.
Right.
Because my pain was in consciousness. My pain was sober, was clean, but I was still in pain, emotional pain, because of what I've become. And the worst thing about it is not so much what I did, how I feel physically done. It's that I didn't think I could stop it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I was doomed to it. And I was going to continually be an addict and continually be in pain. I didn't think I had any control or power. So I take him and I went to the hospital. I was arrested and went to the hospital. It's a weird thing what you remember, but I remember they have you on a gurney, but I'm handcuffed to the gurney. Okay, because I have felonies. I got the new felonies, and I did that. Let me put it this way: you have a bad addiction when you walk into the police station on 2 occasions and ask them to arrest me. Mm-hmm. I asked them to arrest me. They're like, arrest you for what? And the first one was for the burglary, and the second one, I said, well, I robbed my mom. And I know she had reported it, and so that's how that went. That's the second one.
Just because you knew that you couldn't stop your own train of destruction, so
I couldn't stop.
Yes, swinging
I
somewhere
couldn't stop.
Yeah.
And by the way, I can't overdose of these pills. And so they give you charcoal. And it works. Mm-hmm. And I'm here. So that was in 2000. I go to prison. For the first time, I went to prison 3 times. So I went the first time, because what they charged me with was internal possession of a controlled substance.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I always find that to be an interesting charge.
Yeah, I would say if they tested everybody in Reno, probably 60% of the people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Walking down the street. We call it walking on high.
Mhm.
That was the crime. Sure.
Yeah.
But it's a felony.
Yeah.
So I went into Warm Springs Correctional. Did like 7 months on that first bit. And they let me out on parole. I messed up the parole. I got remanded.
How'd you mess that up?
Used.
Yeah.
What back on used? I was in drug court.
So your use was kind of robbing your ability to kind of use your wits at times.
Yes
I mean, it was
and
kind of
no.
like throwing them out of the door.
The first time I went in, the first 2 times I went to the penitentiary, most of my thinking was, I'll deal better when I get out. We'll get a package, and I'm not going to use my own drugs. And well, I'm not the first one to think of this great idea, and I'm going to be a great drug dealer because I'm smarter than everybody anyway. And that didn't work. And the other thing was, it's so difficult, and this is where a lot of people struggle in recovery, because you're coming out most of the time at zero, coming out with a job. You're not coming out. Remember, I always went. I knew nobody was going to take me, so I always went to a halfway house, a 3/4 way house, and had to recreate a world. And so I did. I went in the first time, got remanded, ended up with an escape on my record, which is not good, because that put me at the medium level custody. But now I remember I have 2 felonies. I have a Class A instead of Washington. I have maybe a Class C or B in Nevada. That was my second felony. And then I got out the second time, lasted, let's say, a month or 2, whatever it was. It wasn't long. And then I went in for the final run of my journey. And this was now 2003, 2004, and it was that was real ugly. It was a bad time. And I ended up in a position where I had my jaw broken twice, summer of 2004. And it was broken severely. And so I'm all wired shut the first time over crack cocaine. And then the next time I'm on the streets and my jaw's wired shut and I get into another altercation and the gentleman re-breaks it after I beg him not to. He'll hit me because I'm all wired shut. You can see, I told him, you can have the crack. Go ahead. So anyway, I go into jail. I go into the hospital and I almost die on the operating table because I had so much drugs in my system. I didn't tell them that. And when they went to operate, they put me under.
Yeah.
They said my number just shot all over. So I survived that, and I get out. My jaw's wired shut again, and I had been living with a sugar daddy, which is an individual that takes care of your needs in return that you take care of his or her needs, or him. And so I had this gentleman, but he had moved, so I was back on the streets, and I knew I was dying. I weighed about 40 pounds less. I was about 165 pounds. I was all sucked up and had breakouts all over. And I tell the story. All I had left at that point was a pair of sneakers with no socks, a pair of shorts with no underwear, and a t-shirt. And that's the sole possessions I owned in the world. Wow. And all my fingers had blisters on them from lighting the pipe. My lips were burnt from the pipe being so small. All my nose hair was gone because the lighter was too close to my nose when I light the pipe, a little short pipe. Had breakouts, had blisters on all my toes from walking the loop, as I would call it. The little loop and the big loop in Reno, Nevada, doing my hustle. And I called my mom and said, hey, I need treatment. And she said, I'll give you a ticket. I'll be waiting for you. I couldn't see her. I hadn't seen her in probably a year or 2. But she loved me enough. She said, I'll get you a one-way ticket. to Seattle, go back to Seattle gospel mission. That's what it is I can think of. So I went and did a hustle, and in between, got paid with a rock or crack cocaine. And in my life, there's only been 2 times I hadn't smoked all the crack I had in front of me. And I didn't, because I wanted to sell that one for money for the bus, to eat food on the bus, because it's a 3-day bus ride from Reno to Seattle. And I sold it to an undercover cop.
Oh, gosh.
That was the best thing ever happened to me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I get arrested now. It was the best thing ever happened to me. I thanked those cops later on. I thanked them years later. Because when I was arrested, I was hemmed up, waiting for the paddy wagon. They actually have paddy wagons. And waiting for the paddy wagon. And I'm crying. And I'm smiling. And the cop's like, why are you crying? I said, because I'm going to live. I can do prison.
Right.
I love pinochle. Double deck pinochle. And playing basketball. And so I went there, got sentenced to 6 years in the penitentiary for one $10 rock of crack cocaine.
Wow.
Everybody was blown away. Other criminals were like, what the?
I'm sure at this point it really had mostly to do with your record.
At all to do.
Yeah. Because now the record switched to where you're no longer painted as an addict. Now you're a criminal.
Yeah, it was the judge. I had to say Judge Hardesty. I'm a 3-time convicted felon.
Yeah, he's
now I have a drug sale. And he knew my history. He had it right in front of him. And he said, you come back in, I'm going to give you the habitual criminal statute. My next felony would have been 25 to life. If I had stole $51, 25 to life. Still there, as far as I know. So I went to penitentiary and I began the road to recovery. September 23rd, 2004 is the day I celebrate my recovery. And I've been clean and sober ever since. Ever since. 15 years, and I expect to remain sober. That's my expectation. Whether or not it's true is to be seen. Let's talk about recovery for a quick second. At least this part. I was talking to a gentleman the other day, right at this table, and I said to him, I only have one goal in the program. And he's like, what's that? I said, my goal is to die, never having picked up again. That's it. It's to die. It's not to help the little old lady across the street to be the best husband, best wife, best mother, whatever. It's to die, never having picked up. That's what I want from recovery. Okay, how I do my life is many decisions and many things that I choose or decide to do on how I have integrity and how I do a spiritual principle. But my goal in the programs, the anonymous programs, is to die, never having picked up again. I don't know how long it is. I want to be clean and sober 100% of the rest of my life. That's my goal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We've talked about you going into a couple programs before this, right? And you've had troubles picking up the spiritual aspect of it. So is that something you recognize, like when you, in like 2004, when you're like, this is what I've been missing, or is like, how did that come about to even realize you had been missing the spiritual aspect?
Yeah, not that. Most of that came later. So this is what happens. I go to the penitentiary, same penitentiary I'd been in once before, really twice before, but once I had spent months on the yard. I knew I was going in for years, and I said, if I'm the same person going out the gate that I am coming in, I'm going to have the same results. And that's who I was the first 2 times. So I said, I'm going to work on, I made a decision. I'm going to work on the physical. I'm going to work on the intellectual. I'm going to work on the emotional. And I'm going to work on the spiritual. So the first thing and the easiest was to work on the physical. So I go to the gym, start lifting, I get into powerlifting, basketball, did great. Next thing was the intellectual, because I was intellectually atrophied. I would read a paragraph in a book, and I could not tell you what the first sentence was of the paragraph. I couldn't even remember. And then my language was very limited. I had a very small vocabulary, and a lot of it was expletives, a lot of it was threats, and a lot of it's just the words we use on the streets. Okay, so the tall stuff. who's the mark? Did you catch a lick? These are just terms we have on the street, but they're not used in normal everyday conversation. So I had to work on the intellectual, and I read it. I got up to like 120, 130 books a year. Okay. So then I had to work on the emotion. I knew I had difficulties with certain situations with the past, such as my father. My father ended up shooting him 6 times at the University of Alaska. And I hadn't really dealt with that situation. I hadn't dealt with the situation of sexual assault well at all. I hadn't dealt with the situation of being a foster child and what that meant. I hadn't dealt with the violence perpetrated on me by my father. Okay, so I went to counseling. I went on the yard, and they got counselors, and I went there and did that for a couple, 2-3 years. And then worked on the program too. It's number 4. And so I started I did a year-long drug treatment program in the penitentiary called Waynes, Dwelling Inmates, Nevada. And then I started going to the anonymous meetings, and in fact, I met my first sponsor in the penitentiary. And then the spiritual was like the last thing. And I looked at the Muslims and did that for a little while, and I read the Bible for a little while, but didn't do as much in that area as the other areas. But I was a different person on a continuum of 1 to 100. And 100 is the most spiritually fit person in the world. I was probably about 70. But I would say this. You just have to be 1 iota, 1% more spiritually fit than you want to use. Okay?
Sure.
Right.
So right now I have like a gap of like 50, 60 points difference between me wanting to use, which is like 0. Let's say 1.
Right.
0. 1 versus where I'm at spiritually, I'm probably like 80s. Okay? When I got out of the penitentiary, I was more like in the 60s. And my want or need to use was probably in the 40s and 50s. Because when I got out of the penitentiary 3 years later, I got dropped off 2 blocks from where I got arrested. I was right back in the same world.
Right.
And I was supposed to go to the halfway house. It took me hours to get there. I should have been there 15 minutes. But I was still
making that choice,
making that decision. And I came out in a bad situation because I hadn't really changed a lot of my behavior, my criminal behavior. So when in the penitentiary, what we do is a hustle we do in the penitentiary, where we hustle gay men. And I was doing that. So I was like a pen pal, a gay guy. And he flew up from California to pick me up from the prison, which is 30 miles off record, and to take me in. I was supposed to go back to his room and all. So I dumped him. I used him. I used him for money. And I used him for the ride, a good meal on the way up. But it's the same behavior. It's the same. I'm still hustling.
Oh yeah.
And I wasn't too thrilled about that. And anyway, I went there and made a decision. I got to the halfway house. They were pissed because it took me so long. I was supposed to be there. But I went to. I made some fortunate decisions. The guy I met in penitentiary, he said that he would work with me. I called him as soon as I got to that halfway house, and we went and had dinner that night at a place called Supers in Sparks, Nevada, and I had a double bacon cheeseburger. And I had had bacon in 3 years. We were all out porch in the penitentiary, and we made a decision to start working with the steps of one of the anonymous programs. And that was one of the best things I ever did. Now, the second best thing I did, the next best thing I did, we sat down that first meeting, and he said, no relationship for the first year. And I'd been locked up 3 years, and all I heard was no sex for the first year. And I wasn't really feeling that. It's not what I wanted. I look good, smell good. We have a thing called jailhouse swell. And that's when you get big because all you've been doing is lifting, not doing drugs or anything.
Right.
And I ended up carbs. Anyway, I was 215 at that point. I'm 200 now. So 15, stronger than I ever been. I was a power lifter. Anyway, I'm looking good. 15 years younger. I mean, so I was not really feeling that.
Yeah.
Okay. And I remember like a pregnant pause. And I remember saying, okay, my way hasn't worked. My way hasn't worked. Let's do this. And I did what he told me. And I continued to do what he told me. And we started working, and I still had some growth. Going back to the spirituality, this is the key thing about the spirituality. The spirituality has to do with having some type of presence, power, entity, whatever you will, essence, that can modify your behavior that's outside of self. Because I won't stay sober for me. Because there's times when I transgress or I'm in enough pain where I need to be able to go to another presence, essence, power, higher power, whatever you want to call it, spiritual being, that I have an agreement that I will do the right thing as opposed to what Ken wants to do. Because Ken is based, many times, my will is based on seeking pleasure or running away from pain. That's it.
Short time.
Yeah, always short time. Always short time. And so I've created, but I've engaged in what we call God's will, which is the word God's will, and it modifies my behavior. But it's rare that I ever need to modify. My behavior is good. My behavior is in alignment, in accordance with God's will. I do the right thing. This is the right thing.
Right.
For me right now, this is the right thing. You know, and most things I don't have to run by God. I have a habit of doing the right thing. But you have to be able to create that habit of doing the right thing. So I get out of penitentiary. I didn't have a habit of doing the right thing all the time.
Right.
I knew I didn't want to drink or drive. I knew that was all. But there were still things in the areas of sex. There's the things in the areas of honesty. There's the things in the areas of pride that I still had to work on. And there's still things that I work on. But the level is much diminished.
Right.
I'm more working on the details, okay, of my spiritual growth. Yeah. There's still things I'm going to do spiritual that I want to. I mean, to grow that.
Right. So sorry, go ahead.
You go.
I was gonna say, in your spiritual growth, so as you've been growing spiritually, is it easier because you work with others that are in recovery too right now? So as you continue to grow, is it something where you use these things you've grown from and these things with the people you're working with? Do you guys kind of continue to grow together? Like, I'm working on this, or is it more of like a direct, like, teacher, like, student kind of relationship, or is it more of like a somewhat of a peer relationship with those, not a straight teacher mentor relationship?
It's more of a teacher student relationship because I have the knowledge.
Right.
Now, what I can use is my experiences in specific areas to give examples. One of the reasons why I've been effective as a speaker, because I've been there and I can articulate specific situations, I can articulate emotions behind it, I can articulate the environment. And the same thing when I'm teaching, but I like doing Socratic. I want you to come up with the answer.
Right.
So we'll use wordplay, we'll use sentence completion, let's use that word. And I'm really big on definition. Because in the end, I always tell them, the bottom line is all about one word. Truth. It's all about truth. It's about truth. Because again, that's what a drug does. It changes your perception of truth. Reality is real. Okay? And we use an outside chemical to change. We need to look at what is the truth. And if there's something we can do to ameliorate or to lessen the pain of the truth, let's do that. But also, pain is a gift from God. Without it, you'd be dead. You couldn't feel pain, you'd be dead. Okay, and there's people who are born who cannot feel physical pain, and they usually die or get injured gravely because they can't feel that they're breaking their bone. And the same thing with emotional pain. There's people who don't have emotional pain, but they're usually locked up somewhere. Not locked up, they're in some type of facility because they can't articulate and or understand emotional pain because they don't feel it. They don't know what it is. You know? So we do things that hurt people and we don't have any reaction to it. A lot of times we'll call them sociopaths or psychopaths.
Right.
Okay? We should feel guilt. I still feel guilt to this day. But I don't feel shame. It's a big difference.
Right.
You've heard me present. You've heard me talk. I'm not ashamed about things I've done. Those are my truth. That's my fact. And what I found, it helps people, others. It's helped me. I've said this many, many times. I sleep really well at night. I just slept really well a couple hours ago. I mean, I sleep really well.
Right.
I'm not angry at me. You know? And I'm not, it's not even that. Sometimes I get angry at me. That's guilt. Okay? But I'm not angry at who I am.
Right.
That's a state of being as opposed to a state of doing. Okay? Yeah, I do dumb things. I'm human. No, I'm not human. I'm Ken Miller. I do dumb things. But I don't do things that say that I'm less than and I'm not worthy of being a child of God. I don't do that.
Right.
Right? Let me put it this way. I don't define myself as that.
So, when you did get clean and sober, how did you start to create this life that was stable, that had more meaning to you, that you valued more in some ways? What was the timeline between like year one and year today? Like, what was that journey like? Because it's a large transition.
Right. Yeah, I hear this all the time. I work with gentlemen, some women, but mainly gentlemen. One of the first things that is difficult for addicts in recovery, especially alcoholics too, is that everything is short term. So it's difficult for them to plan and to do things long term. I had a gift. I just understood that it was going to take time. Okay. I remember I would be in the prison, and I knew I had a few years, and I hadn't had the companionship of a woman. And I would say to myself, every day I would wake up and hey, I'm one day nearer. I'm one day nearer. I didn't know how long it would be because I got dropped for parole the first time. And I didn't know, but I'm one day nearer, So when I got out and I had quite a bit of debt, I could have went out there and bought a bunch of blame, and I could have went out there and done things that were pleasurable, short term. But I put myself on a budget, and I knew it was going to take time. And it was tough. 2007, the economy in Reno. I mean, I couldn't get a job. All I could get was a temporary part-time job working in a warehouse. So anyway, the ability to, and so that happened. I moved up here to marry a high school sweetheart, and I came into this world, you see, and that was good, and I got a good job, and I just continued to do the right thing in most areas of my life. There's a couple of things I still struggle with lust. We could talk the next 3 hours about sex, and I'm talking about sex as a all-encompassing. How do you view the world? How do you deal with that area? Because it's one, and we're not gonna do it, but it's one that's not talked about enough. I've seen more people go out over sex and probably self-esteem are probably the two biggest ones.
Yeah.
Okay? Self-hatred, self-esteem, you can't get a good job. Why I've been out of prison for 2 months, 3 days, I can't find a great job. Or, you're in a relationship with someone that's an active addiction. Or you're in a relationship with someone that transgress against some built-in idea that person has to be true to me. Okay, I've seen that. That's another one. God, I could talk about a lot of things. But, another thing I had to learn, I had to leave a lot of prison and street behind. Took time. We talk about the power of words. And there are certain words that are used in the penitentiary. I'll use one I can say, which is punk. You never call another man a punk. Because it means things. And the penitentiary means things on the street. And those words have power, but all they are is a vibration of vocal cords. Literally. And how do you take away power of words to put you into an emotional state that you react in a certain way? Because a lot of my problems were reactions. Okay? I reacted. Not that I acted, I reacted. Yeah. There's a very small space between the input coming in from my environment and my output coming out. My output is usually verbal. I'll threaten you first, and then I'll do something physical. And sometimes I won't even threaten.
Just do it.
Yeah, just do it. Oh yeah, I've done it. And almost always I had to have alcohol to shut down that space. We call it the gap. There was no gap between input and output. And one of the things in recovery I work with men all the time about anger and how to create gap.
Is there like some so what are some of the ways like that you teach gap, like for anybody that's listening, like what are some of the ways or techniques like you might?
Well, the technique, the first technique, so there's a couple techniques. So one of the first techniques that I share, you can say I teach, but all I'm doing is sharing, is many times to create gap, you have to change the environment. You got to walk away. Okay. I had an incident in my garage, in this house, right over here, in my house. And my wife and I got in an argument, and she called me a B. And in the penitentiary and on the streets, those are the two words, punk and B. And she called me a B, and I took a step in my life to what we call put hands on her, to physically harm her. And I couldn't believe it. I love my wife. I spun around. I'll never forget. I spun around, tears pouring out of my eyes, because I couldn't believe I would have hurt my wife over a word. She didn't know. She didn't know. It didn't matter if she knew it. Even if she did know, it wouldn't have mattered. How could a word change, just an argument, change me to a person that's going to hurt the person I love? And I spun and got out of the situation. Right? So that's one of the first things we have to do is we have to, many times, remove ourselves from the environment. I'm big on environment. Big on environment. Don't go to a bar. I tell people all the time, I have enough sobriety, I can go into bars, and I can be around alcohol. We used to have alcohol in this house. My wife drank wine. Rarely, but drank wine. No problem. I do not. But I always tell people, I'm not going to work in the DEA evidence room.
Right.
Okay?
Right. Yeah.
I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because there's two things I do. I help people in recovery, and then I help young men navigate the world. And what I mean by that, I speak a lot on self-esteem, and I speak a lot on dress for success, and I speak a lot on etiquette and manners. On how do we interact? Because they're not getting taught this, young men. They're not getting taught these things. So I'll be doing some more seminars, and I do them for free. In fact, I end up paying for some of them because, again, I want these young men, and it used to just be young men of color or young black men, and then it went to men of color. Now I've just opened it up. Yeah. And many times, one of the most difficult things for individuals to do is to change the people that they associate with. There are people who will not think I'm cool. I'd say that from the stage. I'm as square as they come. I love it. I am square. I used to drive a Volvo. I drive an Audi now, but I'm square. Okay? I'm corny. I love it. My edges are so sharp. I'm so corny. Okay? But I love that. And the people that I want their accolades or I want their praise are not individuals that would think that I'm cool. Okay? Because there are people in the penitentiary on the streets. I don't want them to particularly like me. Okay? Because I don't represent the world that affirms what they're doing. Okay? Many times we need to be around people. Remember I said when I was in college, it was really easy for me to drink alcohol because I had a lot of other people. Attaboy. That's cool. All right, let's go out and, get bent, get wasted. And to them, I was cool and vice versa. Because you affirm and I affirm you. Okay, I could care less about those. I'm not worried. I talk about this all the time. I'm not worried about the terms, alcoholic, clean, sober, all that. I could care less about it. I care about actions. Okay? And many times I have to care about your spiritual condition, which will lead to the actions. And the action is to not pick up. Okay? So I don't worry too much about the nuances of words. I don't, and so because this is a big one. I work with a lot, and I've worked with a lot of guys come out of the penitentiary. And it's bad enough that you're an addict or an alcoholic, but now you got to deal with the stigma, quote unquote, of being. And so people use that term. I'm an ex-con, ex-offender, and therefore I can't get a job as an excuse to not deal with the short-term pain of the rejection of an individual not giving you the job. Because in the end, that's all it comes down to, is the rejection. If you put enough applications out there, you will get a job, especially in Alaska. I can tell you that now. Look at me. Okay? 3 times. I could have said, I'm a 3-time ex-felon. Medium custody or whatever. That's enough. And use that to roll over and remain in one of 2 worlds. Either an active alcoholism addiction or to be in the world where I use people. And that's what I did. I did in the past. I used women to take care of me. And, I chose not to do that. I chose to accept. And so I don't go out and say I'm an alcoholic. I tell people all the time, I don't drink. And then there's times I'm out. No, I can't drink. I'm an alcoholic. How you take it is on you. I'm cool with it. No, I like me.
Yeah.
I don't see the big thing with most people. They need people to like them.
Yeah. I remember I heard the end of your. Like I told you, I caught the last 10 minutes of your talk, and I remember I remember I said it to my brother at home or something. You were like, I'm cool with me. I'm pretty cool with Ken. I thought that was cool. It was I'm pretty cool with Ken. Yeah. Right. In a serious way.
I gotta wake up to him.
No, right.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what it's like to wake up in the morning and you're like, darn, I'm with me again. What is he going to do today that's going to make him feel less than? I mean, I would talk to myself. Literally. I thought I used to sit in front of a mirror with a crack pipe and a 32-ounce of natural ice and cry, tears, looking in the mirror and talking to myself, telling how much I hated me. You did it again. You did it again. Okay? I don't do that. I don't have those conversations today. But that key part, there's a thing called pseudo-self-esteem, which is false self-esteem. I talked about it. And what it means very simply is we get our sense of self-esteem, self-estimation of worth and efficacy, which is the ability to make good decisions for you long-term from others.
Yeah.
I don't need you to validate me. If you hadn't shown up, okay, that's on you. There's still times I struggle a little bit. I was in a relationship and the relationship ended, and it hurt. It hurt because I wanted the pleasure and and pain, and I thought it was an evaluation of me, and it might have been, but that's her interpretation of me, and I just have to respect that. I wasn't the right one for her at that time. Okay, cool. Time to move on. And and we move on.
Yeah.
And I just want to say this, thank you guys. I don't know what you guys are going to do with it. Do whatever you want with this. Remember, I'm not afraid of my truth.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if you put this and blast all over the world. I don't care. I really don't care. Mm-hmm. There's nothing I've said that's going to put anybody in danger. There's nothing I've said to embarrass anybody else. Mm-hmm. This is all me. I've given you permission. I signed the release or whatever it may be, and I'm good with it. Mm-hmm. And I'm great. 2 days from Christmas, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so thank you guys. Really, thank you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go, is there a way that people can reach out to you? Is that welcome? Like, can they?
Of course.
So how would they do that? What would be your preferred method? If people are like, hey, I really liked your whatever. I'm interested in your book. What is it, email?
Yeah. Well, you can do email. You can do Facebook.
Okay.
Facebook Messenger. I'm Ken Miller, Anchorage, Alaska. I'm trying because there might be there's some other Ken Miller. I'm the African American, 57-year-old Ken Miller from Anchorage, Alaska. I'm also on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I get a lot of messages there. And then, you feel free, if you want to, email me. It's ken@denalifsp.com. And if you want to call me, 907-250-8488. And, I do have people reach out to me for recovery for just different things. And, I'm a big believer in serendipity. And I'm a big believer in just if you do well, if you do God's will, you do the next right indicated thing, good things happen. And let me put it, things happen. And then because you have a spiritual presence in your life, you can interpret them as good. And you can make good out of almost anything. And I try to do that. So, again, thank you. Anybody wants to reach out, I give you permission.
Thank you.